There are two clearly distinct views of the history of anti-Semitism. One views anti-Semitism as eternal and in isolation from other forms of oppression. It is never ending, it can't be understood, and it can't be stopped. The other perspective, which we adhere to in this curriculum, understands anti-Semitism as historically contextual, situated amidst interconnected conditions and struggles. It emerges in different historical
Why are
periods
they doing
for
that?
different reasons and in
Why are
relation
they
to
doing
other
that,
forms
do you
of
think?
oppression. These different understandings not only
They're
impact
changing
how
the
we see
definition of
anti-Semitism, but also
anti-Semitism?
how we think about responding to it. That is
Oh,
distinct from or as
God.
part of and connected to other struggles against oppression. There are two clearly distinct views of the history of anti-Semitism. One views anti-Semitism as eternal and in isolation from other forms of oppression. It is never ending, it can't be understood, and it can't be stopped. The other perspective, which we adhere to in this curriculum, understands anti-Semitism as historically contextual, situated amidst interconnected conditions and struggles. It emerges in different historical periods for different reasons and in relation to other forms of oppression. These different understandings not only impact how we see anti-Semitism, but also how we think about responding to it. That is distinct from or as part of and connected to other struggles against oppression. And next slide, please. We look at anti-Semitism in the US historically in relation to immigration and social, economic, political, and racial realities. And we see current forms of anti-Semitism, including white nationalist violence, tropes and stereotypes, philo-Semitism, among other forms. Next slide. We look at Jewish immigrants coming to the US from different parts of the world and how they faced discrimination and exclusion, along with other immigrant communities during different periods. At the same time, of course, African Americans and Native Americans continued to face severe marginalization, violence, and racism that has characterized the long history of racism and exploitation rooted in white supremacist structures and ideology.
Capitalist? That means
Next slide,
capitalist? They're trying to change the definition of anti-Semitism. That's crazy. To struggle against oppression. That's already the golden nugget of this entire presentation.
And we focus on some of the manifestations of anti-Semitism in the US today, beginning with the rise of
Someone
white
call the
nationalist
ADL
violence against
immediately.
Jews and against so many of our communities. And while we've highlighted places and ideologies that we believe anti-Semitism is most present and concerning, we also recognize that anti-Semitic attitudes and views, like all forms and manifestations of injustice, can show up among anyone who lives in our society. And next slide, please. We see how the 2017 Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, exemplifies the nature of white nationalist violence in action. The rally's goal, rooted in anti-Black racism, called for the unification of the white nationalist movement and opposition to the proposed removal of the General Robert E. Lee statue. As part of their racist attacks, participants paraded in Klan robes and swastikas and shouted, "Jews will not replace us." Next slide, please. So stereotypes and tropes have been used historically and continue to be used in different ways that harm or mischaracterize Jews. We've seen the many ways that these characterizations of Jews continue to be articulated and used differently in different settings and can take different forms.
Manipulation, financial control, rich.
While it is critically important to understand what anti-Semitism is, equally important is to understand what anti-Semitism is not.
If Jews are rich, they're bourgeois.
Organized campaigns are derailing and misstating the meaning of anti-Semitism and falsely conflating it with criticism of Israel and Zionism. The misstating and distortion of what anti-Semitism is, it furthers political goals that are harmful to our work for justice, including that of ending anti-Semitism. Next slide, please. While it is critically important to understand what anti-Semitism is, equally important is to understand what anti-Semitism is not. Organized campaigns are derailing and misstating the meaning of anti-Semitism and falsely conflating it with criticism of Israel and Zionism. The misstating and distortion of what anti-Semitism is, it furthers political goals that are harmful to our work for justice, including that of ending anti-Semitism. Next slide, please. There are many, many examples of fabricated cases of anti-Semitism instigated by those standing in opposition to human rights and justice for the Palestinian people. These false accusations of anti-Semitism have intensified as people across the globe have spoken out and taken action in response to Israel's genocidal assault on the Palestinian
This is
people
so
of Gaza.
socialist, I can't even take it. So goddamn
Next slide,
socialist.
please. As we think about moving forward together, we ground ourselves in the long trajectory of those who have resisted injustice. We share examples of solidarities and foundational principles which reflect a commitment to collectively and intentionally challenging injustice together. We also explore challenges, possibilities, and strategies for working together for collective liberation.
And I think that's super important for us to do, is to not look at different systems of oppression
as different.
Yeah, and in isolation, and I think it unfortunately human beings.
This is also going to allow them to call the legitimately rich Jews like Bill Ackman anti-Semites.
In other ways, you can
people understand that, right?
And still be homophobic.
They're going to call Bill Ackman an anti-Semite based on this definition.
And still be racist. And so we need to intentionally look at the connections between these different things from an intersectional perspective.
Look at collective liberation.
Correct. And look at why these things exist. Why does discrimination doesn't just exist because people are stupid. It serves a purpose for somebody. Somebody is benefiting from racism. Somebody's benefiting from sexism. Someone's benefiting from anti-Semitism.
Exactly like
so
that.
We have to look at it from that context.
The biggest thing, though, from that entire presentation is they are trying to change the definition of anti-Semitism. Why are they trying to change the definition of anti-Semitism? Because they all support Palestine. And they all support Hamas because they all think that this is their glorious revolution against the settler colonists, that is Israel. In this case, Israel and the Jews. Well, they're not going to say the Jews anymore because they're trying to change the definition of anti-Semitism. Israel and the Zionists represent capitalism. They represent the private property owners that colonized Palestine. And so they are fully in support of Hamas booting their asses off their land and having their glorious revolution. And I'm saying what they think. I'm not saying what I think. I'm saying what they think. I don't agree with Hamas. I don't like Hamas. I don't co-sign Hamas. I am anti-war and anti-genocide. That is all war and all genocide. I am saying what they think, YouTube. So the reason they're trying to change the definition of anti-Semite, though, is that they all support Hamas. They all got raked over the coals for being called anti-Semitic because they didn't realize how powerful the lobby they were going against actually was, because they're used to getting their own way. But in this case, they got a little bit of pushback. Now, they're still going to win long term. It doesn't matter. But what they're trying to do is to say that Jews, like being anti-Semitic, is about being against an oppressed class. They're trying to say that anti-Semitism is only a thing when Jews are oppressed. And if they're not oppressed, like is in the case, I promise you, they're going to use this to try to say Bill Ackman is an anti-Semite. I promise you. They're going to say Bill Ackman is a literal billionaire that is throwing his weight around and da-da-da. He is not oppressed under the system. In fact, he is, what did someone say? The Jewish face of anti-Semitism in the chat? Was it something like yeah, they're literally going to say Bill Ackman is the Jewish face of anti-Semitism, just like they said Larry Elder is the black face of white supremacy, or something to that effect. But that's the big thing. They're trying to change the definition of anti-Semitism so that it applies to all oppressed people, or just seeing them as an oppressed class or something like that, so that they can still support Palestine and all this stuff without being called anti-Semites. And what they're going to do is they're going to say, no, you don't understand. This isn't anti-Semitic to do this because we're talking about an oppressed people, so it's okay. Man, What a time to be alive.